welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Irish Kaiser, and today in our Risk of Rain class character review series, we're going to be addressing MUL-T. This is currently the, at least in my opinion, most powerful and just easy to get into class. It's not as simple as the Commando may be, but just in terms of what you can get away with while playing this character, it is much more inviting and forgiving to someone who is a little bit newer to the game. Now, his first ability, multifunctional, is his quote-unquote passive, wherein he can hold two separate use items, two equipment. Those are the orange items that you activate with Q that are on a specifically timed cooldown. And the equipment is swapped by using Retool, which is your R ability. In addition to this, you will also be, when you are switching between equipment or firing modes, you will also be switching between which kind of weapon you are currently using, between the auto nail gun and the rebar puncher. That's what Retool does. Retool just allows you to switch moves. That's your R ability. This is a passive that's tied to this, but Retool allows you to switch between the auto nail gun, which is the current highest damage per second weapon in the game, and it absolutely just melts everything. It is obscenely powerful. And the I believe, second highest damage single shot weapon in the game being rebar puncher, which is a charge and fire railgun-like ability, hit scan entirely, which does pierce enemies. It's very, very useful, very high damage, but very low rate of fire. In terms of damage per shot, it's quite good, but damage per second, it's low. Auto nail gun is, in terms of fighting high health bosses and the like, this is the mode you want to be in. It does only 60% damage, but it fires at such a high rate that this seemingly small percentage damage number is entirely null and void. When you first click the trigger, it will fire 6 nails without you having to hold it or input any additional presses of buttons. Blast Canister is your crowd control move, which is also a stun. It's a large grenade canister which flies a short distance and can be air bursted, or will burst on contact with an opponent or the ground, which deals 220% damage, and then following this initial detonation, it will drop the stun bomblets, 5 of them, which deal 44% damage each, which also stun. This ability cannot be overstated in its utility. It has a very short 4 or 5 second cooldown, and it just allows you to kind of get away with a lot of things. It allows you to interrupt high damage enemies' attack patterns, such as high level golems, which deal hundreds of points of damage per shot. You can interrupt their lasers. You can stun large groups of enemies. You can do high damage to large groups of enemies with this. And then finally, his utility ability, Transport Mode. You gain resistance and you move quite quickly. And if you happen to smack into anyone, you'll deal a minimum of 250% damage. But if you're moving faster, you can deal more damage. I'm not entirely sure up to what percentage. It's not incredibly high. It's just kind of a thing. You're a robot traveling at Mach 5. Running into something should do some damage. Now we'll move on to the item reviews. Oh, it seems I have unlocked the Stone Titan. Very interesting. That's besides the point. Soldier Syringe. Absolutely one of the best items for this character because of his already high fire rate, and as it is the highest fire rate of any attack in the game base, this will only make it better. And seeing as your damage per second is the focus, not your damage per shot, as with the Artificer, this is an ideal item to have. Tougher Times, again, always useful, always a high priority item. Monster Tooth is meh. It's not terrible on this class, as it can get a large number of kills in relatively quick succession, but I still wouldn't recommend it over some of the other healing items. Lensmaker's glasses, these are fantastic for every class. Always highly recommend. And yeah, same thing applies here. Double damage is always twice as good. Paul's Goat Hoof is quite useful. You are not the fastest, and because your character is on wheels, it is slightly sluggish to change directions. So flat speed is something that you should be focusing on acquiring. Bustling Fungus isn't really recommended for any other class besides the Engineer, in my opinion. It is useful if you manage to get into a safe position to use it, but it's very difficult to be assured that you will not get ambushed or mobbed or just destroyed instantly upon standing still. And you do have to stand still for a decent amount of time for this to really be worthwhile. Crowbar is useful in that it applies a very large damage boost to the Rebar Puncher, the high damage single shot railgun move of this character. For that, Crowbar is useful. For the primary, for the auto nail gun, this is not useful whatsoever. Tri-tip dagger is also useful for the auto nail gun. I should mention that everything that has a chance to proc on hit, the coefficient factor for procking on most classes besides MUL-T is a 1.0, whereas his is a 0.4 according to the devs. So his insane rate of fire is semi-balanced out by the rate at which items proc, but the rate of fire still makes things proc far more often, at least in my opinion. Not per shot. Per shot, it will proc only 40% of the time that it would normally with any other class. However, in terms of just the number of times you can get an ability to activate is higher just due to the fact that the rate of fire for this class is so obscenely high. War Banner, inconsistent but useful. Cautious Slug, good early healing item, not necessarily the best. Personal Shield Generator, always useful. Medkit, always useful. Gasoline, not a necessity, but it can be quite useful for this class just because you do kill enemies in such a short period of time. Stun Grenade, useful as it is a proc on hit style item. It is only a 5% chance with a 5% stack, straight stack. So it will proc reasonably often, but seeing as you already have a dedicated stun ability that is so effective with such a short cooldown, this is not necessary. Fireworks are terrible. Energy Drink is just an all-around decent item. Backup Magazine is recommended. It's not one of the highest priority items, but if you have the opportunity to get this, then I would recommend it just because your AoE attack and your stun attack are both your secondary attack, your mouse 2 attack. So I would recommend getting this just for assistance in crowd control, and it will help you stun lock powerful enemies. Sticky Bomb, another proc on hit item, very useful, free damage. Rusted Key is terrible. Armor piercing rounds are always good. Atg Missile is a high priority item for this class, as it is a proc on hit with lock-on homing missile capabilities. It takes absolutely no extra time out of your day to calculate, oh, I should shoot at this enemy because it's closer to X or Y or anything of the sort. Is a fire and forget, very easy thing to use, always recommended for this class. Will-o'-the-Wisp, same thing. This is much more useful at higher difficulties, higher levels, wherein there are massive mobs of enemies, and this will kind of cause a chain reaction, causing everything within that mob to detonate in a kind of simultaneous faction. Hapu Feather, always good. Ukulele, always good, especially good on this character because of the high rate of fire. Leeching Seed is the absolute be-all, end-all healing item for this class, as you deal such an obscene amount of damage so quickly, and your rate of fire is so high, that this will keep you at full almost indefinitely, so long as you manage to dodge extremely high burst damage attacks. This will make your life unbelievably easier. This is one of, if not the highest priority item in terms of, at least in terms of this tier. There are some reds that can be considered more useful, but this is just the best green item that you could possibly get. Stack these as many times as possible. Never pass this up for anything. Get the Leeching Seed. Predatory Instincts is useful so long as you have a few Lensmaker glasses stacked, so that you are getting a decent amount of not Monster Tooth, that you are getting a decent amount of critical hits. This will increase your attack speed by 10%, maximum cap of 30, and it will give you plus 30 per stack. Very useful if you have a few Lensmaker's glasses to bump that critical rate up. Red Whip, always good utility item. Old War Stealth Kit, not that necessarily on this class, just as it's not all that necessary on the Engineer, as they are both high armor value classes. I have been told this. I do not have any data to affirm this, but it definitely seems like they survive much better. And as this class has the highest hit point pool in the game, it isn't really necessary. Fuel Cell is doubly value, as you can hold 2 separate use items, and the extra charge for a use item applies to both. Infusion, always useful, extra survivability. Bandolier is not all that great, as all your abilities have very short cooldowns, and it's just not necessary. I mean, it can be useful if you pick it up. I would never just abandon it. I wouldn't not pick it up, but it's not all that useful. Same thing with Rose Buckler, as you cannot attack while sprinting with this class. It's not the best thing to have. Chrono Bauble is kind of irrelevant, as you will be hitting so often that it is an automatic proc on hit weapon, which is quite useful, but there is no reason for you to need to slow anything down. There's nothing that's going to be flying past you at the speed of light. So this is, while it has the potential to be useful, is not in practice. Brilliant Behemoth, always good in every class, fantastic. Frost Relic, I did play a warm-up match, and I did get 2 of these, and they do quite a bit of damage, but I have to say, when activated, when you get the ring of frost, icicles, whatever you want to call it, around your character, your camera will zoom out, and everything kind of the perspective that you're looking from seems kind of skewed. It's not like blurry or anything of that nature, but it is just very odd, and I don't understand as to why the developers would make it like that. I haven't found a way to disable it in settings or anything of that nature. So picking this up, you are forewarned that it will change your character perspective. If I manage to get one, I will try to point it out, but it does affect your kind of awareness. Not that much, not all that noticeable of amount, but it is still there. So keep that in mind if you ever get one of these. Headset, always good, just increased jump height, and you can just do a large single damage attack by landing on someone's head. Sentient Meat Hook is alright, not terrible, but it is an on-hit proccing red item, so with this class in particular, you will be activating this quite frequently. Hardlight Afterburner can really make up for the kind of sluggishness to strafe with this character by allowing you 3 charges of your transport mode ability, which allows you to go super fast, and it gives you armor, and it's just very good. Hardlight Afterburner is always recommended. Titanic Neural, always good, plus 40 health and increased regeneration. Unfortunately, it is not a percentage-based regeneration item, so you will not be gaining more health than other classes per second because of this item, due to your highest health pool in-game, but it is always useful. Queen's Gland, you can summon a Guard Beetle every 30 seconds, and every time you stack, you can have another one active. This can be useful. At higher levels, sometimes the Guard Beetles do get completely deleted, but that's kind of just the nature of that item. Shaped Glass, not recommended. Brittle Crown, not recommended. You do take a significant amount of damage as this class, as you are kind of the designated tank. You are the heaviest health pool and the highest damage at close range class with relatively mediocre mobility. Transcendence can be very good as long as you have not invested a lot in healing items, as it changes all your health but 1 into shields. You can't benefit at all from healing items as they don't apply to shields. So keep that in mind if you ever pick this up. Effigy of Grief is alright, not all that useful for this class. All of the use items are entirely good for this class. If you manage to get an ocular heads-up display, make sure you pick it up while you are in your auto nailgun form, as having automatic critical hits for 8 seconds with that extremely high DPS weapon will allow you to absolutely obliterate anything in front of you within an extremely short period of time. The backup is quite good, just summon 4 drones to fight for 25 seconds. And Foreign Fruit, as it is a percentage-based heal, you will get the most value out of it for this class. This is the best class to have it for, as this will heal the most health per usage. Crowdfunder is only recommended at high levels where money is relatively commonplace. And that just about does it for the items. I'd like to go back. Stay on this account. I did make a couple test accounts. I haven't used them. I was just messing around with settings. So we'll play a little single player match. And you do unlock this character by completing the first teleporter event in the game and going through it 5 times. So this is a very easy class to unlock. Usually the first one, I managed to unlock the Huntress first, just because me and my friend were playing on easy mode and I managed to survive long enough just to unlock her. But in a normal context, you can grind this out probably within less than half an hour if you're really just if you play on easy and you just kind of go for speed running of the first level and then suicide at the beginning of the second level. So you can get this class very easily, and I would recommend that for newer players, just due to the ease with which you can kind of get far into the game. This class does have some weaknesses, which I will try to point out. With certain enemy types, it can be a pain, but that is just the nature of this game. So I have started getting this this starting area rather than Titanic Plains quite often recently, which I can't complain. I really do like the way this level looks. Titanic Plains is probably my favorite in terms of overall aesthetic. It just looks the most pleasing. It's very simple. It's a very easy map to figure out. This is not so much. The teleporter is up there. As you can see, those small pixelated... We use our stun grenade. But as you can see, the damage per second is quite high. The bloom on the auto nail gun, however, is also equally absurd. And if you hold it down for more than a second or two, you'll get something that's half your screen like I'm looking at right now. It doesn't make life very easy, but let's see, what do we get here? Foreign Fruit, perfect. Always good to have. I do like to prioritize picking up use items with this class, just because one of his his big passive benefit ability. Oh, and we get a Hapu Feather. The big benefit of his passive is that you can hold 2. So focusing on getting 2 use items, regardless of what they are, early game is, in my opinion, recommended. And it looks like we have a pair of critical goggles. So we will focus on getting those. Alright. Perfect. This guy's giving us a little bit of trouble while we try to pick up our item. How very rude. We shall see if we can acquire at least a singular leeching seed. That would just be fantastic. But we do have to make the journey all the way up to the top, so I do fear that we're going to be stuck here for a little while we farm items, which is unfortunate. I'll demonstrate you can hold your mouse 1 button for this, and it does pierce enemies. Unfortunately, these gentlemen will not line up for me. as we are such a low level, we are not one-shotting. That is why I do recommend Crowbar for this class. Not highly, not over any of the maximum priority weapons, but I would recommend it just in order to one-shot. If I had a singular Crowbar, I would be one-shotting all of these classes. Now that I'm level 3, I may be one-shotting them, but at this distance, it's just more effective to use the auto nail gun. And you will consistently one-shot wisps that are non-elite up to very high levels. I have never really encountered being unable to one-shot wisps, but I'm sure it does happen later on in the game if I was good enough to get there. Oh, we get a Warbender. How unfortunate. We do have a Tougher Times. I have confirmed through an experimental game that I played with my friend yesterday that if you do stack critical goggles at least up to 7, you will garner a 100% crit rate on all your attacks. You will always crit with everything. And we get a Will of the Wisp. You can see we're still not one-shotting, as we do not have a Crowbar, which is unfortunate, but seeing as this class isn't necessarily the designated one-shot everything kind of class, as the Artificer kind of seems to have been designed to be, it's not all that surprising that we desperately desire items to kind of deal with damage. As you see, that it penetrated through that first beetle and hit the second one behind it. We are doing rather poorly on time. This is an unfortunate location for the teleporter to be. That's just the transport mode. Transport mode has a decently long cooldown of 8 seconds, but it does start while you are, and we can airburst that as we get a second Tougher Times. That is wonderful. And I did mention this in my last video, but you cannot aim directly vertical or well, almost directly down, but not quite. You cannot aim directly down or directly up, which isn't usually an issue, but it's also not. We'll just use that for the sake of gaining some money. We still don't have any healing items, so if there is one over here, I would like to pick it up. Let's go random. Let's see if we get something good. Oh! Wow, this is shaping up to be a good, very good run with 3 Tougher Times already. I believe that's a stack of 15%. And as you can see, this golem will try to use his laser attack, and we can interrupt it quite easily with our stun, making that super high damage move null and void, easily controllable. And we will start this fight with our not fully healed health pool, and I will just show you how quickly one can burst down a boss without any real damage boosting items other than the critical goggles, which aren't playing too much of a role in this. But as you can see, we'll just use the foreign fruit. Why not? We get more elites, and it looks like we're already getting a second Hoppo feather. And as you can see, being inside the buff banner, war banner, I should say. This is in Team Fortress 2. If any of you played Team Fortress 2 back in the day, let me know if you'd like to see a little bit of that. I'm not well practiced, but it is a very good game that the vast majority of my childhood was spent playing that game. That and World of Tanks, but I'm not getting back into World of Tanks for reasons that I shall not specify, as it is an extremely iffy game to play, and it doesn't, and you do lose money when you play. I did spend a lot of gift cards, Visa gift cards, acquiring like the rare tanks, like the super powerful tanks. Like if any of you watched Jingles, he made a YouTuber Jingles. I'll link him in the description if any of you play World of Tanks. But he was the Mighty Jingles. That's his full YouTube name. But he made a bunch of videos on like the KV-2, and that was the first tier 6 heavy tank I ever. Well, it was the first tier 6 tank I ever ground out. Just because it was so powerful, it was so useful, and it does so much damage. And I mean, it's also just the gameplay for it is basically a meme. It's completely bizarre. And we already... Can we see the teleporter? Can we see the teleporter? Not seeing the particles. Not entirely sure. Sometimes they stick it in that, and Tougher Times blocked that. That's beautiful. The fact that we already have 3 of those makes it so we have the potential, if we are lucky, to completely avoid damage ad infinitum. If we can get, I believe it's also 7 of these, if we can pick up 4 more, say if there's a 3D printer or something of the sort, then we'll basically become invulnerable. I do believe if they function the same way that the critical goggles do, then we shouldn't be taking any damage at all. So it is not stuck back here. That is good to know. So we'll never have to come back. It is unfortunate you can't jump while in transport mode. It does limit your mobility in a lot of situations. It's not world-ending kind of stuff, but it definitely doesn't help your kind of... As you can see, Golem wants to try and laser us. It's just not going to happen. How about this? Comment below if you've played this game, or just from the gameplay here on my channel or on other channels. Just let me know what your favorite, both common enemy, like your low level enemy, what your favorite elite enemy, and your favorite boss enemy are for this game. I'm gonna have to say my favorite regular enemy. Oh, and we get a radar scanner. I suppose we'll pick that up. But my favorite normal enemy would be, of course, the Golem. My favorite elite enemy. That's a tougher one. In terms of looks, I would have to say the I really do enjoy the fire wisps, even though I despise playing against them and dealing with them, as they're just such a pestilence. But in terms of just their aesthetic, it looks like a flying demon head, and that appeals to me at some kind of instinctual level. I just really like the aesthetic of it. And my favorite boss enemy... Oh, and we get a Leeching Seed. It is over. We have won the game. Well, not necessarily. We still have to be smart about this, but... As you can see, look at that. We get 2 of them. But they look like flying, flaming demon heads. It just looks so cool. Even if they are just painful to deal with, it's still... Something can look nice and not be pleasing to deal with. Like rich people, they usually look nice because they have the money for plastic surgery, but they're usually not nice to deal with, as they have that kind of air of arrogance that's kind of become associated with them, and they've kind of embraced it as well. But they look nice when you're not dealing with them directly. They're perfectly alright. But unfortunately, we do not have any mobility enhancing items, so we are kind of stuck as we find the teleporter particles. I'm very much so a fan of the Golem's character design. Very simple, very blocky, nice, big, hefty boys. I love it. They just evoke strength. Stun the bell, but apparently the stun does not prevent it from firing its 80 quadrillion damage landmines. Rather, they look like naval mines. And I'm not seeing any items nearby, so we will activate the teleporter. And we have a wandering vagrant. And look at this. And the second it goes into its mega ultra attack mode, where it kind of detonates itself, we will just use our movement ability to get out of sight and completely avoid that attack. Because that is the kind of thing that will deal enough damage to kill us. As we get lucky there in tougher times, manages to block it. Alright, now the boss is dead. It is unfortunate we don't have the cube, the gravity cube. But we will make do as we get several elite Lemurians. Sorry, sir. Oh lord, we have to take care of that. That is priority. Any class that can really burst you down, any enemy, I should say, that can burst you down, such as golems, should be your top priority when playing as MUL-T. Interrupt that attack and just bursting down. Beautiful. And we'll just do a quick check up top. Actually, we have the radar scanner. Let's see where there are items. There are indeed items. Oh, we have a drone. That's quite good. There's some over there, some over there. There are a few up here. Oops. Using our jump to cancel our sprint. Flash, stun grenade, I should say. I'm sure there's a reason they can't call it a flash grenade. Just quickly burst down this golem, staying just outside his melee range so he doesn't attempt to laser a second time while we're using, well, I should say waiting on our cooldowns. There's a chest, which we will grab while we are here. As we get a backup magazine. Now we have 2 stuns, which will make it infinitely easier to stun lock everything. Which I'm sure has the enemies just trembling, quaking in their boots. Toss those down. Why not? But as you can see, the accuracy at longer ranges is abhorrent. How funny. As we transfer over into hard difficulty, we get Rally Point Delta. Rally Point Delta, not Dalpha, my lord. Well, this is high priority. Getting a 4th tougher times for an over 50% chance. As you can see, the damage on this is not the best, unless you get a crit open. You kind of just poke this golem. Now we have an additional stun grenade if he decides to laser a second time, which they usually don't. I've yet to encounter one that has the cojones required. And stun lock the Imps. The Imps do have an obscenely large health pool, I have noticed. And they don't tend to... I mean, they don't dodge very well, but stun moves seem to be the best way to kind of deal with them. Without exception. They do decently high damage, but they are a melee class, so it is entirely possible for you to... We'll burst down this golem really quickly. Larger enemies are exponentially easier to destroy. Just as a rule, the inaccuracy of your weapon prevents small things such as Lemurians, or even wisps to a degree, really be threatened by your accuracy at any distance other than such an extremely close one as we are in now. Work on getting a little bit of money here. Why not? Let's do a quick little run around. Just barely caught this bison edge of our attack. But as you can see, where I was struggling with the, let's say the commando class to kind of burst down enemies at an acceptable rate, there is no such issue with MUL-T. Destroyer of mobs. Just a few more, and it seems we've gotten to a lull in the spawn tables. Oh, and we got a crowbar. Let's see if it's entirely possible to one-shot things now. Down like golem. We'll come across two more, ever eager. Cannot escape, fool. I am master of both proximity and distance. Very, very good. Get another critical goggles here, if you don't mind. Now, I am not sure if the on-hit proc of critical glasses will ensure a 100% crit rate as it did for the commando, or the commando, just because he does have a proc factor on hit of 0.4 rather than 1.0. So I am not sure how that plays into a full 7 stack, which will give you a 105% rate of for critical hits. So I'm not entirely sure how that would play into that. I am interested to see if we can manage to get 5 more. I am much more focused on getting tougher times, however, as that is something we have not only twice as many of, but is arguably more valuable. As we don't seem to be getting anything out of this shrine, so I'm just going to ignore it for the remainder of this. We get another War Banner. And as we have a double stack for War Banner, it has made the radius in which it covers much higher as we get... Oh, well... Predatory Instincts isn't terrible. That is the headdress that allows you to stack attack speed buffs. As you can see, having two stun grenades is extremely useful. We'll just speed on over to the teleporter here. Don't really want to waste any more time. Jump up here. What are we gonna get? We're gonna get a magma worm. Interesting. It will eventually make its way over here. This is probably the best class for dealing with magma worms. At least I would recommend it. Just because the high burst damage allows you to maneuver around for long enough and avoid its attacks while still dealing exceptionally high amounts of damage. As you can see, it's nearly dead here. And I do play almost exclusively on normal difficulty when I am by myself, as we do finish that fight extremely quickly. We do not manage to avoid this, but we will use this golem just to heal ourselves. Oh my. These imps are doing absolute work for the enemy lineup. We don't seem to be able to avoid enough damage. We will use our foreign fruit here and attempt to make our escape. Draw them out, and we will go immediately pick up. Look at that. Is that not absurd? We'll just airburst those. Grab ourselves an Atg Missile Mark 1. I'm not entirely sure if the Atg Missile Mark 2, which was a red tier item in the first installment, is in this game. I haven't unlocked it if it is. Which is unfortunate, but just another fact of playing the game. It would be nice if we could get a critical scythe, Reaper Scythe I believe it's called. That would greatly help the, if we can't get up here, are there any items? I don't believe I've been all the way up here yet, but we have managed to complete the 3rd stage with relative ease. Alien Head. Oh. Oh, well I've never had that before. Reduces cooldowns for all skills. Well, that just seems blatantly overpowered. If you ask me, at least. That doesn't seem very good. Now instead of 8 seconds, we have... Very interesting. Very, very interesting. missiles circle around wildly, searching for a target but finding none. Now we have moved on to, at least in my opinion, this is the hardest realm. As we immediately get an Imp opener spawn. That's quite interesting. These large Lemurians are not much of a problem, as you do high enough damage to kind of move beyond them. It seems the Imp wants to body block for his friend. We'll ramp up our rate of fire here. Luckily that attack is tied to the ground, so if you have any kind of air mobility items, then it's relatively easy to avoid. Just jump away from it. You really don't want to be caught by that. As you can see, Will of the Wisp becoming kind of a chain detonation. And that is a boss mob gone with relative ease. And little to nothing to worry about. I would like to focus on getting more tougher times. I haven't really had the chance to stack them to such a degree. I believe this is the highest stack I've ever achieved. So I would like to see how ridiculous it is to have as many as possible. So I'm going to make that a priority. If you have the chance to stack a large number of these, then I would always recommend it, as it is just such a consistently great weapon, or a great item rather. As we'll run through the secret area, it seems the vault is closed. That is a potential spawn area. I have spawned over behind that vault door occasionally, and it will be open when you spawn there, of course. You can get to the main body of the area, but it is a spawn area. Just hoping I could make you aware of that. Destroy these bastards. Stunlock the Imp. Now that our cooldowns are so greatly reduced from the alien head, I'm not really feeling like activating the Shrine of Combat. I would like to switch this. Oh, no. That's why I switched weapons in the first place. The radar is not all that useful, in my personal opinion. Finding items, I mean, while it can be a pain, it's not so difficult. As we stunlock this greater Lemurian and just melt him. I'm not entirely sure what category the greater Lemurians fall into, whether that's an elite or just a really powerful normal enemy. I'm not, because there are elite variations of them, but I consider them an elite in and of themselves just due to their supremely high damage. Just get rid of these. These crab things, these volcano hermit crab things are exceptionally aggravating to deal with. You know, getting burst down a little bit here. Crowdfunder, no thank you. I already have something with a ridiculous rate of fire. As you can see, killing enemies, not a problem. Killing things is not a problem in this class. And seeing as killing things is sometimes the hardest thing to do in this game, having that be kind of the... Oh, that's not... I do wish that was a teddy bear. Pulse Goat Hoof, nice. Bandolier, meh. Not all that useful. And especially less useful now that we have the alien's head, which reduces cooldown times even further. We have a critical goggles. 2 more critical goggles, so we're up to 4 critical goggles. Very good. I call them critical goggles. I know they're lensmaker's goggles. I do apologize. But I'm not... You just melt everything in sight. My god. We are still lacking a lot of the mobility items that are nice to have. We get another fireworks. Unfortunate. But not. We get a key. Very unfortunate. We'll do a run through here. It seems we have gotten the highest number of chest spawns I've ever had on this map. This is absolutely absurd. They're just everywhere. We get another Bandolier. Old War Stealth Kit. Got even more up there. This is just absurd. I do have to admit that I just don't understand why this happens. I do know it does. Oh, wow. Drone here. And I think that will have to do it. We'll just run on over to the boss fight. Oh, wow. Smart in. Jumping right over my stun grenade. Deal with these. Now we'll make our run over to the teleporter, which is right down here. There are even more chests, my god. Another war banner. We are up to 4 war banners. I do wish I could trade those out for a couple more tougher times, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. Another crowdfunder. How disappointing. I am hoping that we would just get an ocular heads-up display so that I could demonstrate the sheer raw power of it. There. This again should be another easy boss fight, as this is the supreme boss-killing machine. Unfortunately, we do have a very, very dangerous fire imp elite, which is another very nice looking elite, if not nice to deal with. And we'll just blast this down. We're going to switch abilities just so we can, fire our rockets. Oh, this is going to be, we have to not be touched at all by those. I have my trigger finger set on Q to hit my foreign fruit should I start taking damage. But as you can see, this is just a wash at this point. With such high health, it's just not really fair. The damage per second, coupled with the... we get a rose buckler. Unfortunate. Unfortunate. Not the worst thing, but definitely not remotely close to the best. Bells are very high priority with this class, as while there are relatively few things in the game that will ensure your demise, no matter what you're playing, the bells will. Very high burst damage class that is also flying is kind of a nightmare to deal with. It seems we're just getting shelled by those crabs. That is what the crabs do. They just kind of drop bombs everywhere, litter them all over the place. Not fun to deal with. Exceptionally annoying because they usually fire from behind a ridge line, so you cannot even see them while they're firing at you. But there definitely needs to be something to balance out what the player is capable at these higher levels. So I do commend the developers for making it a little bit more difficult. Fortunately, not a tougher time. And it seems we have a set of rocket drones. I don't remember picking them up, but they must have been on this level, as I rarely ever see rocket drones anywhere else. Unfortunately, no more tougher times. And now they are firing from somewhere else entirely. We are done here. Plus a celebratory grenade. And this is by far the longest run I've ever managed in this series, and that is just due to the fact that this class is so obscenely powerful. My skills with this class are, I'm sure, lacking. I'm sure there are plenty of you who know far more about the ins and outs of this character and the best builds for it. I do a lot of theory crafting and stuff of that nature. Greater Wisps are also very easy to deal with if you have the ability to fly. I do have to say, it does make it a lot simpler to kind of manage them when you're not kind of attached to the ground. And the teleporter's back up here again. How unfortunate. This is probably one of the least convenient places to encounter the teleporter, as it's far away from pretty much all the item spawns, or at least the potential areas for item spawns. And it's a small area with very little room to dodge or to run away. You're going to have to jump off that cliff. But we should be perfectly alright, as we have the foreign fruits, which will allow us extremely high amounts of burst healing. Thank the Lord. You can see Will-O-the-Wisp just doing a lot of work here. So we'll just drop down because we have enough feathers to kind of plenty of extra jumps. This is where the vast majority of all item spawns reside, is down in this pit. I'm not going to start picking up drones yet. We already have quite a few. 2 healing drones, a gunner drone, and 2 missile drones. Very, very easy to deal with. We'll just pick up a few of these crates. Another ghost stuff, very nice. Another crowbar, not bad, not bad. As you can see, we are starting to approach the point where our items are so highly stacked that it's difficult for enemies to kind of catch up. And at this point, it becomes almost a necessity to just take it as far as you can go. I do hope this video isn't too long. I'm not anticipating an exceptionally long upload time to render and everything else. I'm not looking forward to that. But if we do well, then I owe it to myself, and of course to my fans, for this supreme kind of demonstration of this character's ability. But this also does show that this class is so powerful that it does render someone even as average, I would say, as myself, with relatively little experience in terms of time. I only have a few dozen hours on the game, but this class does allow me to perform exceptionally well. Now, I never understood why these oh my. Okay, well, I've never actually been able to hit those. I always thought they had health bars because the developers were just adding something in for no reason. But it does seem that there is a method to the madness. Oh, Lord. It's finally getting warm here. I suppose the spring seasonal allergies are coming in. That looked really unfortunate. Just murder that. What are we? Oh no. High damage. Luckily, this area does have a bit of cover to avoid the monstrous attacks from this behemoth. But it does do such a ridiculous amount of damage. We're going to have to focus down this greater list. Oh god, oh god, oh god, let me... Here. Now if we can just kill this one... Good, good, good. We are in good shape now. Luckily for us, the Wandering Vagrants, while they are very difficult to deal with normally, we do have a kit that allows us to burst them down fast enough so that it isn't so much of an issue. Oh god, oh god, yep. I didn't think I could avoid that. We haven't actually used our rocket launchers yet. Just let those fire off. Get all these elites. Just carpet bomb the whole area. Get rid of all these things. Very, very, very nicely done, if I do say so myself. We will level up to 18 and continue on with this mad dash. We are now at the ha difficulty, which is the highest normal difficulty in the game. Ooh, got another lunar coin. I haven't spent these in quite a while. At this point in this game, I don't think it's worth it to even begin thinking about spending it on items, because all the lunar coin-based items are, while powerful, they do kind of, each one has a very large detriment to the benefit of it. And so, kind of, isn't really worth it when we're kind of focusing on making ourselves the best we can be. Inviting weakness is not the most effective strategy. We already have a Beetle Queen boss, seeing as those are, in my personal opinion, the easiest boss to deal with. We should have no issue handling. We need $23. Nope. Another war banner. This game really does like giving me war banners. Stun on Golem. As you can see, our damage is starting to falter a smidgen. Not a crazy. Not to such a degree that I might be Goat's Hoof. Always useful. We have found the teleporter particles. Very, very good. Very, very good. Let's gain an energy drink. As you can see, our rate of fire is so exceptionally high that we can almost stun lock larger enemies. Very good. But as you can see, Will-O-the-Wisp is making short work of these smaller enemies. So we'll activate the teleporter. Why not? And we will get a set of Stone Titans. This is my favorite, one of my favorite. I'm kind of torn between this and the Sand Walker thing. I forget what the name of it is. But between those two, hiding here for a moment. Oh god, that's a fire golem. That is just about the opposite of everything we've ever wanted. But as you can see, the elites are starting to become more troublesome than the actual boss itself, which is definitely not something you really want to be dealing with. You can just keep these. Oh god. The ice golem smacks us. We'll use a foreign fruit. We have 2 charges. With, I'm assuming, a reduced cooldown from the alien head. We'll try to burst one of these down at the very least. Oh god. Can't afford to be hit by that. Not a chance of surviving. We are going to have to jump back into the teleporter zone. So try to stun lock and destroy this fire golem. As soon as we will be entirely able to do. Not without some risk, but at this point, this is when I believe that having more stun grenades would be beneficial. just because we are firing at such a ridiculous rate that it would be. And apparently the Stone Titan is still alive. I don't know where he managed to get off to. We just focus fire. This golem, as you can see, the obscene amount of damage we can deal makes it possible to survive. I do have to admit that foreign fruit is making my life possible. Though I don't know where the boss went off to. I am rather concerned, as he was right next to us. So I do hope he hasn't glitched himself somewhere I can't get to, as that would most assuredly be the end of our run. There he is. Still in the teleporter zone. Excuse myself. I'll switch over. Fire all my rockets. Why not? I do better damage per second than that, but it's perfectly alright. As you can see, there he's dead. Nice, and you can jump right over that. And we get the Titanic Neural. Not as good this late in the game, but you know what? Why not? Why the hell not? Alright. Now we're back to the hardest area, in my personal opinion, in the game. We have a collection of wisps spawning. This is my only issue with this particular part. Now everything just has such high health, it becomes kind of a crapshoot to do any damage. We are slowly getting through. We'll just use that. Managed to kill the boss. This Raider Wisp is presenting more than a few problems, and now there's a second one, which is definitely the opposite of epic. And they do not get stunned, which is the strangest thing about them. You can fire all the stuns you want at them, but I guess considering they do spawn as bosses, they cannot be stunnable. I don't know if we've bitten off more than we can chew here. Doesn't seem like it. It seems like we're doing fine. As Will-o'-the-Wisp kind of takes over. this is the main problem with this area, in my humble opinion, is the stupid wisp spawn rates. It becomes almost impossible to deal with them. It is unfortunate that such a mechanic is needed to balance the game, but it is really the only thing preventing me from just staying there and jumping around like a moron for so long as I please, really. As you can see, everything does such stupidly high damage. But we can't really compete. And seeing as we only have a single leeching seed so late in the game, we haven't gotten lucky enough to get a second one. We're going to have to keep these stun locked if we want any chance of living. As you can see, it's not too much of a problem. Bandolier is actually becoming quite useful. At this point, we are losing far more health than we're gaining back, however, as another fire golem joins the fray. And that is the end of this exceptionally successful run. Almost 1.1 million damage dealt, 50 items collected, 64 purchases, 6 stages completed, and almost an hour of total playtime. 731 kills and 1 death. I would consider that a success. But unfortunately, this extra long episode is now drawing to a conclusion. I have been the Irish Kaiser. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what you'd like to see on my channel next. And I will bid you all a good night.